Hi friends, today we embark on another captivating journey into the shadowy world of true crime stories. Get ready to investigate, discover, and reveal the secrets of a dark and dramatic case. Are you prepared to dive into this thrilling investigation? Let's begin now. He wanted to be more than cousins. The murder of Zion Foster. The last text message 17-year-old Zion Foster sent before she disappeared said she was on her way home. The teenager had told her mother and boyfriend that she was going out with her favorite cousin that night, something she did at least twice a month. However, when her mother asked him to help find her the next day, the cousin delivered surprising news. He had not seen or spoken to Zion in years. Welcome back to True Crime Stories. Today we're going to look at a missing persons case that turned into a murder investigation. It's a story about a family and disturbing revelations about who you can trust. Mother of 6, Tierra Milton, woke up on January 5th, 2012, to discover that her eldest child, Zion Foster, had not returned home the night before. Zion is a senior at East Detroit High School and just celebrated his 17th birthday in November. Like most teenagers, Zion went through a rebellious phase. She had threatened to leave home and had even done so the year before, at age 16, because she was unhappy with her mother's rules. She ran to her grandmother's house but was persuaded to return home. She was only there a few days before leaving again, causing Tierra Milton to worry, so she called the police. But it turned out to be another false alarm. The teenager is struggling with her grandmother's recent cancer diagnosis, as well as her own desire for independence. That January morning was different. Zion had finished his serving shift at the Detroit Wing Company the night before. She asked permission to leave the house after getting home from work and was honest about who she was spending time with. Her favorite cousin, Jalen Brazier. With these conditions, Tierra Milton agreed and watched Zion walk out the door just before 11 p.m. The next day, Zion's boyfriend, high school classmate, Vertez Gonzalez, texted Tierra Milton asking if she could contact Zion because he could no longer contact her. The last text he received was at 12:59 a.m., saying OMW on the way. But Zion did not come home. Calls to her phone went straight to voicemail, and messages sent throughout the night were not received. Finally, at 8:53 a.m., Vertez wrote, "Are you alive?" followed by, "This is the worst thing ever." Adding to the heartache of Zion's absence was the response Tierra Milton received from her cousin, Jalen Brazier. Despite what his daughter had told her, Jalen Brazier responded that he had not been with Zion the night before. He asked Tierra Milton exactly how often Zion claimed she spent time with him, and she replied, once or twice a month. A frustrated Jalen Brazier texted her back saying, Zion's lies about him were sneaky and unsafe. He suggested that maybe she was spending time with someone who lived near him. Zion shared her phone's location, tracking with her boyfriend, Vertez, and the tracking landed her right across the street from Jalen Brazier's house at 11:24 p.m. the night before. Vertez, admitting to some insecurity in their relationship, took a screenshot of his girlfriend's location at that exact moment. Jalen Brazier suggested that perhaps Zion was using him as a cover story, when in reality, she was at a neighbor's house, knowing someone else on the street or nearby. Jalen Brazier helpfully suggested Sierra Milton go to the police, but he asked to keep it private. Fortes is not easily persuaded. He sent Jalen Brazier numerous text messages and confronted the 23-year-old with screenshots from his phone. In response, Jalen Brazier sent back a video of his Ring camera system, showing no entries showing Zion at home. She was never there. East Point police were not inclined to treat Sierra Milton's missing person report with any sense of urgency, since her daughter had a history of running away. According to the distraught mother, the officers at the station did not mince words. One in particular said, "I mean, I'll be honest with you, we're taking this as her running away." With little support from law enforcement, Sierra Milton took matters into her own hands with the support of family and friends. A search effort for Zion was launched in the following days. They posted flyers, held rallies, and spoke to the media with a plea. "We need your eyes. Need your help." Officers were eventually dispatched to speak with Jalen Brazier, who was, in fact, Zion Foster's cousin. At age 23, Jalen Brazier is the father of 2 young children and has a long-term partner, Katrina Sierra. Sierra Milton believes her daughter and Jalen Brazier have always been close, but according to Jalen Brazier, they haven't spoken in years. Jalen Brazier invited officers into his home and told them that he had last seen his cousin nearly a year ago in May 2021. He explained that it was Zion's mother and her boyfriend. She seemed to be concentrating on the idea that she had been with him that night. Jalen Brazier asked to see the footage from his camera, and when Sierra Milton looked at it, she thought there were gaps in the entries of the footage from the night of January 4th, suggesting it had been deleted. But Jalen Brazier insisted she was never here. East Point police found nothing suspicious when they searched the house, and they listened as Jalen Brazier expressed his frustration at being dragged into the drama by a 17-year-old cousin with whom he rarely spent time, caused by time. He emphasized that Zion was known to be a runaway, having done so 4 times before, and that her mother just played it a certain way. However, Sierra Milton knew Jalen Brazier was lying.
He told me he hadn't seen or been in contact with her for 3 years, which is impossible when you were in my driveway and gave me a hug.
To verify whether Zion was across the street from her cousin's house, as her location data suggested, Sierra Milton checked her neighbor's doorbell camera. Around 11:15 p.m. on January 4th, a white sedan, the car believed to be driven by Jalen Brazier, was caught pulling into his driveway. From the car, 2 people, clearly a man and a woman, entered the house. Jalen Brazier drove Katrina Sierra to work just before 11 p.m. That night, she was on the midnight shift at a manufacturing company, so the second person entering the house at 11:15 couldn't have been her. There was a search warrant for the house and car. Although the search of the house was inconclusive, the contents of the car were carefully classified and examined. It wasn't until law enforcement brought in cadaver dogs that something important was discovered. The dogs clearly indicated the presence of human remains in the trunk of Jalen Brazier's car. On January 19th, Jalen Brazier, 23 years old, along with a lawyer friend, voluntarily sat down with detectives. Apparently he lied about being with Zion the night she disappeared. Jalen Brazier gave what he claimed was an honest version of the events that occurred that night. He said he picked Zion up from her house and brought her back to his place, where they smoked marijuana and just relaxed and watched TV. Jalen Brazier said Zion appeared very sleepy, and he saw her head tilted back as if she was about to take a nap while sitting upright on the couch. He then went into another room to pour himself a drink, and when he returned, Zion did not respond. Jalen Brazier reported that Zion's heartbeat was weak, and he described her heartbeat as almost stopping. According to Jalen Brazier, his young cousin had just died on his couch. Instead of contacting 911, he panicked, not knowing how she died. He thought it would look as if he had killed her. Jalen Brazier said that Zion's heartbeat became very weak and her breathing became almost non-existent. He testified that he was frightened, thinking, "It looks terrible, it looks bad," and not knowing what to do, he put her body in the trunk of his car and put her in the trash. Detectives questioned Jalen Brazier, asking how he knew Zion was dead. According to his account, the 17-year-old boy stopped breathing suddenly and for unknown reasons. Jalen Brazier said he checked her pulse and couldn't feel a heartbeat, so he assumed she was dead. Detectives pressed Jalen Brazier, asking if he truly believed Zion was dead at that time, or if she might still be alive, but having difficulty breathing. Jalen Brazier admitted that he knew the difference between someone who was dead and someone who was not breathing properly, and he said he believed Zion was definitely dead. Jalen Brazier agreed to lead detectives to the landfill in Highland Park, where he claimed to have dumped Zion's body. He told them that Zion had been at his house about 2 hours before her death, which meant the time of her death was only 1 a.m. Cell phone records show Zion's device went offline at 1:15 a.m., which corresponds to the time she stopped responding to texts from her boyfriend, Vertez. Jalen Brazier told detectives that he had not deleted any data from his device since the night of Zion's death, but they discovered that he had performed a full factory reset on the phone. His phone just 2 days later, effectively wiping everything on his device. Jalen Brazier led detectives to a dumpster in Highland Park, claiming he had placed Zion's body there, but there was no more sign of her. Detectives questioned him further about the details of that night. In a follow-up interview the next day, Jalen Brazier changed his story, claiming that the two had taken acid that night and was certain that it was the hallucinogenic effects that caused Zion's heart to stop. The detective tried to take advantage of these new statements to force a confession, but Jalen Brazier insisted that he did not mean to harm Zion. The detective admitted that the effects of hallucinogenic drugs could explain Jalen Brazier's actions if he accidentally did something under the influence. However, there was no confession or identification of Zion's body, so there was not enough evidence to prosecute murder. In a later interview, Jalen Brazier retracted his statement about the acid, saying that he felt pressured by police to provide more information, so he made up a more complicated story. He also changed other smaller details in his account, further weakening his credibility. Finding no bodies, the investigation turned to a thorough search of local landfills, with dozens of volunteers sifting through mounds of trash in an effort to find any trace of Zion. Meanwhile, Jalen Brazier faces up to 4 years in prison for lying to police about Zion's whereabouts. Despite the lies he told police, the Detroit Police Department, DPD, with the assistance of the FBI, continued to obtain an arrest warrant for Jalen Brazier for murder. At sentencing, Jalen Brazier pleaded her case before the judge, saying, "I turned myself in. Yes, I lied, but I was not in a good mood. I had no way to prepare myself. Being given such a situation, I was so scared I didn't know exactly how she got through, what made her get through. I just knew 1 minute she was fine, and the next. According to me, I didn't cause that or anything like that out of fear and panic like I've never felt before in my life. Jalen Brazier admitted it was his choice to dispose of the body, but he claimed he didn't know what to do. He said he sat there for at least 10 minutes, thinking about his children upstairs and the difficulties they had faced to get where they were, and everything just fell apart. He wished he could take it back and call an ambulance, or Zion's mother, whom he described as so sweet. Jalen Brazier was sentenced to 23 months in prison. While in detention, his phone calls home to his girlfriend, Katrina Sierra, and other family members were closely monitored. He occasionally used another prisoner's calling code to try to keep his conversations private. And he was also found to be in possession of a banned mobile phone, which he used to exchange thousands text message with Katrina Sierra. Jalen Brazier's concerns about finding Zion's body were revealed. If his story was true, and she died suddenly of an unknown and non-violent cause, he should have wanted to find her, as that would have exonerated him. Instead, he repeatedly expressed relief that no major developments occurred in the search, calling it the search for Cox. Jalen Brazier served just over 9 months before being released early through a 90-day special detention program. However, his freedom was short-lived, as on June 13, 2023, after a year and a half of investigation, DPD was finally issued a warrant for his arrest for first-degree murder, and tampering with evidence. Investigators were able to retrieve Jalen Brazier's search history, which included incriminating searches related to garbage trucks, compactors, and how to avoid detection by police, as well as disturbing pornography related to regarding cousins and cousins. At the preliminary hearing, Zion's boyfriend, Vertez, testified that he believed Zion had a history of seizures, which may have led to her sudden death in Jalen Brazier's living room. However, Zion's mother, Sarah Milton, disputes this, and Zion's medical records appear to support Sarah Milton's assertion. Prosecutors argued that Jalen Brazier's constantly changing story and the digital evidence left behind, including his internet searches, all pointed to one explanation: that Zion had left home, Jalen Brazier, in the trunk of his car that night because he killed her. According to the prosecution, Zion has a history of seizures and is taking anti-epileptic drugs. On the day she disappeared, she went to Jalen Brazier's house, and he later told police she had shallow breathing and a weak heart rate. Jalen Brazier testified that he checked to see if she was alive and discovered she was dead. He panicked because they had been using drugs, an activity that is still federally illegal, and he afraid I might be blamed. Zion's previous cell phone, found safe at home, revealed months of inappropriate and sexually explicit correspondence between her and Jalen Brazier. The text messages showed Jalen Brazier regularly invited her to his house, offered to take her to the basement if she ran away, and advised her on how to evade police. Prosecutors described the messages as pervasive, sometimes praising her intelligence and appearance, other times probing in an immature way, such as suggesting that others thought they are a couple. And Jalen Brazier brags about how easily he can get women, even calling himself a god. Prosecutors argued that Jalen Brazier, 23, had been grooming his cousin for years, fantasizing about her, and that on January 4th, he must have acted on his impulses, herself, leading to her death. Jurors also heard how Jalen Brazier learned that his girlfriend, Katrina Sierra, was pregnant with their third child the day he brought Zion into his home, and that text messages between the couple showed that Jalen Brazier lied to Katrina Sierra about what he was doing after taking Zion to work. Earlier that day, on the night Zion disappeared, Jalen Brazier picked her up from work, even though his pregnant girlfriend Katrina Sierra was at home. Katrina Sierra noticed a deep scratch on Jalen Brazier's collarbone, which he claimed was done by the cat, although Katrina Sierra thought the cat had never scratched that deeply before. The trial lasted 2 weeks in May 2024, and Jalen Brazier decided not to testify, while the state called 32 witnesses. A forensic anthropologist reviewed Zion's medical history and determined that the only condition she had that could have led to her death was asthma, although an asthma attack could have manifested very different from the symptoms described by Jalen Brazier. Zion's boyfriend, Vertez, testified that Zion told him she had epilepsy, but Zion's mother disputed this, and Zion's medical records appeared to support her mother's assertion. The defense argued that Jalen Brazier dumped the body because she feared being arrested for marijuana use. But the prosecutor argued that this was an unreasonable reason, since marijuana possession is essentially a parking ticket violation. Vertez himself said Zion specifically told him that she had a history of epilepsy and that he was not concerned when he saw her condition because he knew about her history of epilepsy and that she was taking medication for it. Sierra Milton and the rest of Zion's family waited while the jury deliberated, hoping they would see the many inconsistencies in Jalen Brazier's story and see through the lies to the truth that he murdered Zion and disposed of her body with absolute disregard for her life. The jury returned a guilty verdict after just 30 minutes. At the sentencing hearing, Jalen Brazier maintained his innocence of the murder, but the judge pointed out the convicted man's failure to accept any responsibility for the murder, the disposal of Zion's body, and the lies told by him to the police and the delay he caused in the investigation through his lies. The judge stated that Jalen Brazier left his 2 young children in the house alone, manipulated and lied to his family, and ultimately acted alone, and that it is unlikely he will be rehabilitated. Jalen Brazier was sentenced to 30 to 90 years in prison for murder and an additional 5 to 10 years for tampering with evidence, with the terms to be served consecutively. Zion's mother, Sierra Milton, expressed joy that the jury saw the truth and justice was served, even though Zion's body was never found, despite an extensive search, scattered in landfills. As of the time of publishing this video, Jalen Brazier is still detained, waiting to be sent to general prison. Please share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Don't miss out on the pulse-pounding updates from true crime stories. Hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell. Stay tuned for the latest in dramatic and thrilling crime narratives that will keep you at the edge of your seat.